Now, without any further delay, I'll turn the time over to Mr. Govinda Ariel. Mr. Govinda.
Thank you, Mr. Ikra. Third world mass murders, third world justice. I'll begin by explaining the first part of my title, that is Third World Mass Murders, Third World Justice. The third world justice for third world mass murders, by this, what I have in mind is a particular type of war crimes tribunal, one that has been in existence for the last 10 years or so effectively, that is the War Crimes Tribunal in Bangladesh. And the other one is a War Crimes Tribunal for the continent of Africa. That has been in the discussion in the last, especially in the last decade, and especially in relation to the International Criminal Court and its exclusive, almost exclusive focus on mass murders and mass atrocities in Africa. Now, the way these war crimes tribunals are presented, especially the one in the regional criminal court, the regional international criminal court in Africa, the presentation seems to the very conceptualization of this kinds of war crimes tribunal is an assertion of an political and independence of a state, and in case of Bangladesh, and the reason in case of the African war crimes, African International Criminal Court, that has been conceptualized and proposed by states in Africa, by leaders in Africa, and by the regional organization in Africa. However, unlike what I am trying to argue, and I'm at this moment I'm trying to develop a concrete argument around this hypothesis, is that the way these war crimes tribunals at the level of the state or at an international level, in case of Africa, the very conceptualizations of these war crimes tribunals actually reinforce the assumptions of international law. That is, that Africa makes a claim, and very legitimately, that international law has worked to relegate Africa to a lesser, to an existence of lesser importance vis-a-vis Europe, and this has been argued historically in international law, especially by in the third world approaches to international law, and outside of international law, in IR, in sociology, in political science. And this is a very legitimate argument, legitimate blame that Africa and the global South pins on international law as a European project, and as a project with particular goals, particular ideas, including ideas of justice, that presents itself as universal. However, at the same time, the very conceptualization of these war crimes tribunals, both the Bangladesh tribunal and the one in case of Africa, they work to reinforce the assumptions of international law, and they actually reinforce all the biases that international law holds. Now, one of the this becomes absolutely clear when we see that the Bangladeshi tribunal, the International Crimes Tribunal, the statute, the judgments, the statute and the judgments, and the rules of procedure of the tribunals are all judged based on one standard, that is the adherence to fair trial standards. Based on the fact that the judgment and the statute adheres to fair trial standards, the courts adhere to fair trial standards, the Bangladeshi tribunal is promoted as good, or it is judged as falling short of the so-called international standards. Very few engagements with the War Crimes Tribunal in Bangladesh look at beyond the narrow standard of whether or not the tribunals stick to the fair trial standards, and the premise of their argument is whether this tribunal works to impose victors' justice. That is, whether the winning side of a war, in this case the Bangladesh Liberation War, has used trials, and in this case the war crimes trials, to impose a particular kind of justice that benefits the winners of uh, the war, and that disadvantages the people who sided with the losing group. Now, a related but a different point is whether constituting war crimes trial at the international level or constituting a war crimes trial at the domestic level with international judges sitting beside judges of the same country would remedy the Bangladesh Criminal Court or the Regional Criminal Court that envisioned for Africa would remedy the problems of not sticking to fair trial standards or being an instrument of imposing victors' justice. Fourthly, the one argument that we don't make, whether in case of the International Criminal Court, but especially when we argue with the War Crimes Tribunal in Bangladesh, War Crimes Tribunal in Africa, or War Crimes Tribunal that the states constitute in their own territory within their own domestic laws, is how the very idea of a war crimes trial, one, second, the very standard of how a war crimes trial is good, that is if it sticks to fair trial, or bad if it does not, and how if it does not, it is an instrument of imposing victims' justice, and so on. How these arguments do not question the fact that the very conceptualization of a war crimes tribunal, whether at the level of whether in Hague or in Dhaka or some cities in Africa, they don't question the idea that a society that has seen instances of mass murder or mass mutilations or mass rape is going to see materialization of justice both for the individual survivors of the mass murder as well as for the society at large, and in case of Africa for the continent. I'll finish in 2 minutes. But we don't question that we're not strictly talking about criminal justice. These war crimes tribunals are promoted as instruments that bring about justice. Now, I argue that justice for a given society cannot have unlimited meanings. That is, just a meaning of justice that has political currency can only have so many meanings. It could mean instituting secular ethos in a country or a region. It could mean liberation of women and the workers. It could mean bringing about socialism. And it could mean so many things depending on who is promoting that particular conception of justice. And what I argue is that international law promotes one particular kind of justice, and this particular kind of justice is promoted by international criminal law and also by the War Crimes Tribunal that are presented as alternative to the ICC or the hybrid tribunals that have been promoted as institutions that are neither internationals, hence they are democratically constituted, and yet they stick to fair trial standards and don't impose the death penalty. I would finally like to conclude by talking about the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. One of the slogans of the Black Lives Matter movement was to defund the police being the most important criminal justice institution. The question of defunding the police is not about whether the police is a good institution or a bad institution. The point is that the state, especially in the US and in Europe and around the world, the state has shrunk, and the only institution that the state has which has any material relevance to the people is the police, and the brunt of this institution is borne by different communities, especially the Black community in the US. Hence, the question of defunding the police. In the same spirit, The third world approach to international law and critical approaches to international law question the very idea of international criminal law. And I am saying that this argument should be extended to the idea of war crimes tribunal constituted within states and also in the region, because they actually reinforce in a very nuanced way, they actually reinforce the very assumptions held by international law, and they tend to promote a particular conception of justice for the society and for the region, and they dominate and they outcompete other conceptions of justice that promise to bring about material changes for the lives in the lives of individual victims as well as the society at large. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Igra.
Thank you, Mr. Govinda. I thank you for your wonderful presentation. Please stay with us till the end. I think our audiences will have questions for you. So now we would like to invite Syed Murtaza Murtad, a PhD student from a PhD candidate from Department of International Relations, South Asian University. He will be talking on the country without post office, Kashmir in the age of communication revelation. Mr. Syed Murtaza, please.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
So, good morning, everyone. I think I'm the only outlier in this panel. Most of the one common thing about other panelists is that all of them are from legal studies, while as I'm from international relations. So my approach hopefully will be different, and yeah, and I'll be speaking on an interesting thing with this. The title that I have chosen is that I have chosen the country without a post office. I have taken it from Agha Shahid Ali, is a Kashmiri poet who has written extensively on Kashmir, the issues faced by Kashmiris' day-to-day life in Kashmir. So I have taken this title from his poetry collection, which was published in 1997. So the reason being that in this paper, I'm trying to connect three different strains of politics that usually international relations scholars don't do. I'm taking local experiences, connecting it to national security, and then connecting into international security as well. So I hope you'll have some interesting insights to make. And yes, so I'll start with the background behind this poetry collection. Agha Shahid Ali wrote this collection in it was collected rather in 1997 in the background of the massive insurgency that erupted in Jammu and Kashmir in 1990s. So, but with insurgency, there were reports of massive human rights violations across Kashmir Valley by Indian soldiers. So, reason is the impunity given by Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which according to which if any armed personnel finds anybody suspicious, he can shoot at him with no further trial at all. So the impunity, I would call it the impunity to kill, and it's actually they're visible on the ground. So those people, I call this. Since I'm connecting the theme as well, I think what is happening in Kashmir is actually a genocide in making. What qualifies to be a genocide is 30 years down the line is dead bodies every day. So that is what Agha Shahid Ali meant. So I'm connecting again that in this era of where people talk of rights, where people talk of liberties and other things. So why do Kashmiris stand in all of this? Do we have a chance? No. Do we even have do we even know these words? Rights. What are our rights in today's context? So we don't have any technically speaking, we don't have any. We were denied. I was post 5th of up to this August 2019, when the abrogation of Article 370 took place in Jammu and Kashmir. So there was massive communication blackout was raised. For 4 months, no mobile, no landlines, nothing, no reporting. There was zero ground reporting from Kashmir. So the purpose of this very act suggests that there was some ulterior motives. At the state had certain ulterior motives that they did not want information to get out. I'm not commenting on the legality of the act itself, whether this act of abrogating Article 370 was legal or it should have been done or not. That's a different story. That's a different talk. What I am speaking here is, was there, the mere taking the rights that were snatched from people. No communication from that particular territory was allowed to reach global audience at all. So where do we stand as an international community in all of this? Does international community have any responsibility towards it? If yes, what did they do? If no, and what is the purpose that in these international institutions like ICJ or other war crimes against these, what are they doing? Is it that we, as we we the students of politics think that law is what powerful thinks? Is that the case? If yes, then okay. If not, then what is the purpose of this? Creating these institutions and creating these legal systems that provides, it's rather providing impunity to people to kill, to maim, the use of pellet guns in Kashmir. What is it? Secondly, I'm talking about this is the basic experiences of a Kashmiri, that connecting experience to, as I said in the first place, that connecting experiences, local experience to the national security. So national security, I mean, going by India's national security, I would say yes. India had certain national security apprehensions that there will be a fallout against it, and it to some extent was valid. But the thing is that in the name of national security, how far you can reach. So in the is national security the kind of the curtain they use behind the while they shoot arrows behind the curtains? It seems that Indian national security was under, if it was under threat, there were other means. It should have been the war against a certain section. If it was so, which I don't believe, it was what they did was, it was a war against everybody, each and every Kashmiri. It was a war which, if there is any institution at all, needs to be investigated, needs to be tried, and those involved should be tried at all. And third, I'm getting into the international politics dimension of it. This act almost audios. Please mute your audio. Somebody is speaking. Can you hear me? Yeah. So I was talking about, I mean, this act on part of India almost. No. Hello, can you hear me?
Mr. Murtaza, you are audible. Please proceed.
Yes, thank you. So this act almost brought two nuclear, countries on the brink of a nuclear war. We were at the, brink of a nuclear catastrophe. So if there are any institutions working, say UN or whatever, so what is the purpose? And if India's unilateral action is making a bilateral issue, as I mean, the position of India is not itself clear. India sometimes calls it an integral part, sometimes talks of it as a bilateral issue. Now it's a trilateral issue because China has become a part of it. There was this, on the floor of Parliament, India's Home Minister made the statement that we will take Aksai, which is under China, and that has created another party in our dispute. And India is not acknowledging the actual party to the dispute, that is Kashmiris themselves. The thing is that our Kashmir is a party to the dispute, as international, these legal things would suggest that people do have right self-determination. If yes, so why are we not a party to the dispute? So this is the international. No, only time is a little, so I'm constrained. So I'm just going through it. I'm not getting the details of things. And another thing is that it's a potential genocide. It's a genocide in making. The thing is that over the last 30 years, we have lost more than 1 lakh people. We have 10,000 enforced state enforced disappearances in Kashmir. APDP, Association of Parents of Disappeared Persons, is a non-governmental organization which is keeping a data of it. They suggest that more than almost 10,000 enforced state enforced disappearances are there. So what is the response of international community? Is international community responsible, and what sort of responsibility they are fulfilling? Is there any? So I think as a student of politics, my approach is definitely different from yours. But the thing is that I do expect, if these institutions exist, I'm myself not a liberal institutionalist as many would think. But the thing, my point is that if these institutions exist, at least they have to fulfill certain criteria. And these are the things. If they are not able to do it, then who else will do? Is it that actual we are going, as Morgan would say, it's a power politics? Is it that the case? If yes, it's as no the liberal. I believe that liberal institution has failed us as a Kashmiri. As it's speaking from the experiences, I'm connecting experiences to politics, to international politics, and to global responses. It seems that international regimes and these international legal regimes or whatever they have failed us. And politics has won over legality. This is the point that I am making. This is the basic point, that is the politics, the power politics has, you know, outdone this legality in international politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murtaza. Thank you for your well put insights on this paper. I think we'll be coming up with questions for you. Please stay with us. Now we'll be inviting Mr. Viranjana Herat from Sri Lanka. He's currently a PhD candidate under Faculty of Legal Studies, South Asian University, and he will be talking on transitional justice in the digital age in the context of Sri Lanka. Mr. Herat.
Yeah, thank you, Ikra. Are you able to see me? And also you can.
You are audible, and yes, please proceed.
Okay. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much to inviting me for this conference. My topic is, as you know, that transnational justice in the digital age in the context of Sri Lanka. So now I would like to first, I think you all know about a kind of a, all have kind of a basic idea about the Sri Lankan issue, why Sri Lanka needed transnational justice. You all know, I think you know that there was a 30 years long, around nearly 3 decades long war was fought in Sri Lanka. Then what happened? Finally, Sri Lankan government forces defeated the LTTE, that means it called Tamil Tigers. They were defeated by the Sri Lankan army. That basically happened. But the after that, generally speaking, that the government side and other parties, the majority Sinhala people say that there was a huge human rights violations done by the Tamil rebels. But on the other hand, that Tamil people and the general international community, also the Tamil people, that LTT supporters, that kind of a people said that there's a huge human rights violation occurred against the Tamils. It's interpreted as some kind of a genocide. Also, it's a war crimes in that kind of a manner in the legal terms. But however, frankly speaking, the Sri Lanka is a government. The Sri Lankan army is a government. That other people, other parties are rebels. So we have to understand that difference first. Then what happened was that finally there was a winning party. There is a winning party, Sri Lankan government. So In this war, there is in even the United Nations reports in 2015 described that says that there are several human rights violations done by Sri Lankan army and Sri Lankan forces and the Sri Lankan government side, and there is some missing persons, innocent people were killed, civilians were killed. Also, there were some prisoner rebellions who captured by the Sri Lankan army was killed. That kind of a human rights violations occurred. So, in this backdrop, once in 2009 that war ended, in 2009, Sri Lankan government introduced some kind of mechanisms to the transnational justice for the process as a part of the process of transnational justice. They introduced some things. For an example, they established one office called the Missing Person Office, and generally that by one of act to act, then that generally the office, the authority of the office is searching upon the missing person and make some kind of justice for them or and their relatives and make some compensation or kind of a truth-seeking process. Part of that, before that, Sri Lankan government actually established a committee for it generally called that LLRC report committee. Then they make a report as a LLRC report. It's a lesson learned for reconciliation report. That under that committee also, it's a kind of a government appointed committee, but the committee report was hugely criticized by government, Tamil rebels and Tamil faction, and also that international community, and says that this report is not a comprehensive one. It is also biased one because it says that it's actually mainly blamed against Tamil tigers regarding these issues, not for the Sri Lankan army. That was the background. So now actually it's more than 10 years. That same everything happened 2009. From 2009 to till date today, there's nothing in this kind of a war incidents in Sri Lanka. So whatever happened in 2009, after that there is a kind of a we can say it's a peaceful process. So but the Tamil's point of view, they are demanding, and the human rights point of view, that law point of view, demanding for justice what happened during the war, and especially the last couple of years of the war, because it was a very claimed as a human. Generally, people say that the most human right violations occurred in these days. So in around 2009. Anyway, now that demand is still going on to 2000 to now. Today is 2021. It's around 11 years. But in legal point of view, if we go through the all actions done by the Sri Lankan government, actually we cannot say that it is a good transnational justice process occurred in Sri Lanka. That's a general point of view. And the legal point of view, we can say that as a legal researcher, I can make also that conclusion. But the Sri Lankan government side, they always try to do some kind of a different approach. They are going to take the transnational justice. They said that in the LTT era, I mean, before 2009, there was no election or no elections in the north and east area, because especially the area controlled by those days Tamil tigers. They said that there is no democratic process. After the war, we held elections. Now there is a kind of a democracy there. A part of that, Sri Lankan government says that LTT take people actually abducted young people as the child soldiers and other things. Such a human rights violation was not going in north and east now. A part of that, they said that those days there's nothing in the development happened in the north and east. Now it's totally changed. You are getting education, transport, electricity, everything with you. That's a process. Generally speaking, that's a process Sri Lankan government is following to do with the transnational justice. But it is not the transnational justice. It's a kind of a different approach they follow. But the other hand, the Tamil says that the majority of Tamil community says we need justice. Actually, from 2009 to till date, we can see several protests going on in North and East for demanding justice for the missing persons. Also, they are just demanding some law reforms. They are requesting for repatriation process because still there are some land of them controlled by the Sri Lankan army. So that is the situation, the practice situation. So now I would like to move to the digital age. How digital age, the digital point of view, how we can see these kind of things. My opinion is that because of the actually that the both process, I mean the government process and the government approach and the Tamil approach, generally the right subject approach, uh, that government is trying to suppress the demand of the people of the North and East. Suppress of the they are going to suppress the victims. That's the general approach of them. In different point of view, we cannot we can say actually it's kind of a suppress. But the on the other hand, the Tamil says they said that the government is giving something else, not the justice, not the transnational justice. They just use something else like the development, election, or whatever. We are not demanding it. So in this process, but still to now 11 years, the protest against government approach is going on. It's a kind of a different thing. I mean, this is the kind of an advantage of digital age. Why I am saying these kind of things? Because even government tried to suppress the demand of the people, they can keep that their protest, their demand even outside the Sri Lanka, because that there is a huge diaspora community, Sri Lankan Tamil diaspora in the all over the world. They can do whatever they can do, the protest, they can do online, taking their online actions against this kind of things, and they can keep context. Then whatever they do, some people together with the North and East, they can take that because of the digital era, they can take the world this kind of.
Mr. Herath, you have been muted.
Whatever. Yeah, it's okay.
Yes, you are audible now.
Yeah, sorry. Actually, the thing is that because of that situation, governments or the other parties are not able to suppress the demand of the people, demand of the victims. So, in this backdrop, I am saying that because of the digital age, transnational justice is still live. It's a live concept in Sri Lanka because the comparative, if we are going through a comparative process, I saw some things in Colombia. After that, there are issues, and they introduced some kind of a transnational justice process in the digital era, especially with the because of this pandemic. They do some kind of a truth-seeking process. They are online, and then they saw some kind of issues about the cyber attacks and cyber security issues. Apart of that, they saw some kind of issues regarding to access to justice because of the people are not able to participate the event through the online. But I think these all are some kind of a second generation issues in but the in Sri Lankan issue, I think I feel and I find out that because of the digital age, the Sri Lankan truth-seeking process, Sri Lankan demand of the Tamils are still alive because of these digital technologies. So, in this backdrop, we can say transnational justice is still have so many advantages because of the digital era. So, the government or any party or any or any state, any powerful authorities are going to suppress the transnational demand of the transnational justice is not they are not able to control that kind of things because of the technological development. This is my conclusion. This is
Thank you, Mr. Herath.
Thank
Thank you for your well-presented discussion on transitional justice in Sri Lanka. I think our audiences will have questions for you. Please bear with us. So now we'll be inviting Syed Ali Akhtar and Mahfouza Sultana, both are PhD candidates from Faculty of Legal Studies, South Asian University. And we are expecting them to discuss on relationship of genocidal atrocities and terrorism, how atrocities elicit violence. I would like to request our panelists, Said Ali Akhtar and Mahfuza Sultana, that since we have a time constraint, we are expecting that conclude your individual speech within 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen first. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Seems to be a problem. Is my screen PowerPoint presentation visible?
I don't think so. Could you please check it again?
Okay. Mahfuza, can you share the screen? If it is possible. Actually, in my laptop, it is not getting shared.
Just wait a minute with me. No, this.
Yeah, I think it is shared now.
It is visible now. Please proceed.
Yeah. It is not changing. Can you change Mahfuza to first? Yeah, thank you. Hello everyone. As our esteemed panelists have spoken about genocide, fair trials, and transitional justice, now our topic is the relationship of genocidal atrocities and terrorism, and how atrocities elicit violence. Can you change the slide? Can you change the slide, Mahfuza?
Changing. Is it working?
No, I think it's not. Okay, so let me speak on the topic without even having slides. Now the topic is the relationship of genocidal atrocities and terrorism, how atrocities elicit terrorism. Now I will speak on the first part of the title, and Mahfuza will speak on the second part. Now, as we know that the term genocide was invented by Raphael Lemkin in 1944 in his book Access Rule in Occupied Europe, Laws of Occupation, an analysis of government proposals for redress. The term genocide, the crime of genocide, was not included in the statute of IMT Nuremberg trial, and later in General Assembly declared it as international crime in 1946. Now, the definition of genocide, the crime of genocide, was not formulated until the adoption of Geneva Convention 1948. And the Rome Statute of ICC also has the exact replica of definition mentioned in the Genocide Convention. As we see Article 6 of the Rome Statute in the definition, there are three things that I want to highlight. First is the intent to destroy in whole or in part, and there are four grounds for it: national, ethnical, racial, or religious groups. As part of genocide, basically scholars have defined it in a way that it is an attempt to eliminate a whole group either by killing them or by creating conditions that led to their death. Now, as Genocide Convention only has four grounds, but it does not include political grounds. And even the convention refers to the killing in part, but there are certain scholars such as Evan Staub who considers this as mass killing and not genocide. He considers that mass killing is a way station to the genocide, and when the atrocities proceed further, then it leads to genocide. Now, as the international legal aspect of genocide deals with what constitutes genocide, international law, however, does not explain why a government or a group would commit genocidal atrocities. What are the instigators? What are the influences? Now, our aim of this presentation is to draw these influences from the work of Erwin Straub and argue that the relationship between genocidal atrocities and terrorism cannot be explained before we touch upon the issue of causes of genocide. Now, the central idea here is to explain how destructive consequences of genocidal atrocities lead to another form of violence. Now, according to Smith, the most frequent source of genocide in 20th century has been the monopolization of power. In other words, who will have power and who will rule. He categorized genocide in 5 categories. One is retributive, institutional, utilitarian, monopolistic, and ideological. Be that as it may, but Erwin Staub, on the other hand, tries to explain that even if the most frequent source of genocide was monopolization of power, there are certain other psychological factors that play at the same time. So he argues that the primary instigators are difficult life conditions in a society and group conflict in combination with self-interest. Now he defines difficult life condition in a society as economic problem or political conflict and disorganization. As part of the process, a vision of ideal society is formed by a group, and therefore they turn to violence. Now, examples of self-interest includes violence by dominant group against a subordinate group demanding more rights, and violence against indigenous groups arising from the intention to take their lands or develop the area that they have occupied. Stop also gives central role to the bystanders or witnesses to stop the evolution of increasing violence. So he categorized bystanders as internal bystanders and external bystanders. He cites example, for example, of Rwandan genocide, where the French continued to give support to the government. The UN peacekeeping forces were withdrawn, and international community did not even call it as genocide until some Rwandan patriotic front was formed by the Tutsi group to defend themselves. So he says that when there is a conflict between two groups who are against each other, there is a central role of the bystanders or witnesses, be it at domestic level, those who have not joined the perpetration, and at international level, like international organizations and other nations. They can actually play a very crucial role in stopping the evolution of increasing violence. Another important point that he highlights is group conflict often involves vital interest between the two groups, such as territory for a living space. A classic example of his is Israel-Palestinian conflict. Another important point that he describes is the perspective of that destructive leaders are themselves affected by the social condition. Because it has been discussed that there are leaders who want to gain power with the focus of their, the motivation is power, and they try to form a group and, commit such kind of atrocities. However, Stobbs brings this perspective that sometimes the woundedness of the leader and the group is often the meeting point, and that is where they both connect to do what they want to do. Now there are two implicit factors, influences that he mentions in his book. Is the some sort of war and abrupt transition in regimes. Some sort of war in the sense of ethnic war or civil war, where the country is in a chaos, no one is really into a power, and there are different groups fighting for their for monopolizing the power, and when there is a problem in the transfer of the power as well. So these are the reasons, psychological reasons, that play a crucial role in the genocidal atrocities. Now I come to the relationship point. In terms of who are the perpetrators and victims, genocide and terrorism are often the opposites of each other. But Stock points out to the fact that some of the same psychology that support genocide can also support terrorism. A good example is Hutu Tutsi. Hutu, were a subordinate, a group in the beginning. But later, when they got power, they committed atrocities because there was certain sense of antagonism between these two groups. And there may be other multiple influences that lead to terrorism. Like this, genocidal atrocities is not the only factor that will lead to such kind of violence. But most of the scholars have agreed to the fact that terrorism is the warfare of the weak and the genocide is the warfare of the powerful. That means when you have the state power or you are in government, then only you commit such a crime. Now, last point is therefore one of the causes of terrorism is genocidal atrocities. Now, my co-speaker will highlight the specific instances of how this relationship functions on ground. Over to Mafroza. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Wali. And thank you, the host. So I think we are in time constraint. So I will try to speak fast. So as Ali has talked about, am I audible? Yes.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, thank you. So as Ali already has spoke about the genocide, so let me start from the terrorism. So in international law, it is still an undefined. However, we have sectoral conventions, and in domestic law, state to state, they have defined themselves. So I'm not going to discuss about the definition, but let's talk about the what causes. So yes, there is no specific cause or single factor that provokes this crime, but of course there might have some psychological factors and that may motivate someone to commit violence. So we are picking here that one genocidal atrocities may influence people to commit another violence, and here I mean terrorism. If we see the book Political Terrorism, which was published in 1988 by Smith and Jungman, he has give a 109 definition where he isolated the recurring elements, and there one of the elements is the psychological effects and anticipated reaction that covers in the 41.5% definition. So talking about the root cause, if we see the general UN in 1973, General Assembly has started to study the causes of terrorism. They established ad hoc committee for it. But although these resolutions till 1991 evident that that is the root cause of terrorism and that need to study, but if we study after 1991, that resolutions are measured to eliminate terrorism, that has moved beyond the study of causes of terrorism. Now, nowhere they're saying we need to study of it. However, it is essential to mapping the ways to move beyond the violence and promote reconciliation to prevent the recurrence of violence. So here I am also connecting the us versus them. This is linked, of course, linked to genocide and terrorism, because this differentiating us and them and devaluating the other is a psychological influence that linked to intent to destroy. So indeed, the group dynamics are important both for terrorism and genocide. So on the relation of terrorism and genocide, it is essential to note that terrorism is the warfare of the weak, and where genocide occurs when the power of the state is turned against group without a state power. Already Ali also mentioned about it. So now come to the genocidal atrocities and terrorism relationship. So again, I am making a point from the Erwin Staub. He's saying, in terms who are perpetrators and victims, genocide and terrorism are often the opposite of each other. However, people who become perpetrators of genocide are usually who they have historically devalued, excluded, and discriminated against members of the group. And those are devalued and suffer discrimination, they turn to become victims. Usually they just be victims, they try to live themselves, but some of them who belong to or they themselves identify with some groups that those are experience devaluation exclusion may become violent, and it does happen. In case of Rwanda, Cambodia, we have seen that who are devalued people, they commit crime again. So if we relate this with this Myanmar situation, Rohingya situation, so there are some scholars who talk whether there is a possibility of Rohingyas being terrorists and whether they are they might exploit it by other terrorist groups. So, of course, we know the Arakan Rohingya Salvation Army, scholars talked about them. In this regard, yes, there is some basis and it is happening on the ground. So the sufferings of Rohingyas have caught the attention of the militants in the various parts of Asia. Like the crisis got support from Southeast Asian jihadis, specifically from Indonesia, with calls to relocate the Myanmar's Rakhine Strait to West Jihad. For instance, this Indonesian militant group IDF issued a call for jihadist volunteers to defend the Rohingyas, raising the dangers of Southeast Asian region. Also, Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, they attempt to exploit the Rohingyas Muslims. So, the information I am talking is a research paper of Nanyang Technology University, the Terrorism Research Center. They have published this. So, this terrorist group are exploiting the Rohingyas to their own advantage. This is the one biggest consequence of genocidal atrocity. So, even and this consequence of may harm the Bangladesh's hard-earned counterterrorism achievement. If we see in 2017, the UN High Commissioner of Refugees also mentioned that this is not important only the Rakhine State in Myanmar, that there is a reason they might be terrorists, some of them. This is also in the whole region, the possibility remains. So, but this type
Ma'am,
of
sorry to
situation,
interfere. You have surpassed your allotted time. I think you should.
yeah, I will just take 30 seconds. So this type of situation, then it turned to one-man terrorist, one-man freedom fighter. Some of them will say this is a justified movement. Some of them will say they are the terrorists. So this is a gray area and perception of who defines it. But as already speaks Syed Murtuja, Kashmir situation, Sri Lanka, and some other parts. So if we do not give justice to genocidal acts, there is a chances of being another illicit violence. Thank you.
Thank you all of our panelists for joining us in this session. So I think we will go ahead to take some questions from our audiences. Already we have received few questions and we'll be going seriatim. First, we have a question for Mr. Govinda, an anonymous. We have a question from Mr. Govinda that can you please share your opinion or suggestion on alternative of domestic war criminals? Mr. Govinda, are you with us? Mr. Govinda? Okay, I think he's having some technical glitches from his end. So we'll be moving to Mr. Syed.
Hello.
Syed, Mr. Govinda, are you with us?
Yes.
Yes. So we have a question for you from the audience that can you please
yes.
Can you please share your opinion or suggestion on alternative domestic war criminals?
Yeah, I would like to, in response, I would like to say that what I am arguing is that international criminal law, the main international, can you hear me? I'm audible, right?
I think you are having some technical glitches from your part. That is probably because you are having an unstable network, maybe.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, please proceed.
Yes. So the main international criminal law institution is the ICC, but the ICC works in complement does not assert its primacy over states. States have the freedom. Even the states that are member of the ICC have the freedom to constitute war crimes tribunals domestically. So, and then there is the idea of the hybrid tribunals. So international criminal law has the three different kinds of institutions. There is the international criminal court, there is the domestic courts, and then there are domestic courts where international judges sit beside domestic judges, and these kinds of tribunals are known as hybrid tribunals. What I am trying to argue is that international law and international criminal law has come so far to say that international law has this flexibility to experiment between different kinds of alternatives. And I am arguing that each alternative reinforces the very assumptions that international law holds. So international law argues for its own benefit that it has this inbuilt flexibility, that it has evolved from 1948 from Nuremberg, and it has evolved from 1994 from the ICTY. But I am saying that each alternative reinforces the very biases and the very ideas, the very particularities that international law has held historically. So while there can be different alternatives, but each alternative reinforces the very existing bias of international law. That's my argument that I'm trying to make.
Thank you, Mr. Ayal. We have a question from Mr. Syed Mushtaq. The question is, since Kashmir is a part of Indian territory, and there has been a constant argument from Indian government side that Kashmiri people's vulnerability to Pakistan, what do you think to be the most best solution considering the prevailing situation in Kashmir? Mr. Syed.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Syed, you are audible.
Yes. So the question, of what needs to be done or what India is, whether it's part of India or whether it's Indian territory, that's debatable. It's Kashmir's disputed territory. It's India which has taken it to the international, this UNO. So I'm not getting into that. That will be a separate topic that I'll speak some other time. The thing is that what is the just solution? Just solution is, we talk of right to self-determination. So if India is confident of winning Kashmir's hearts, they can take one. They can keep observers, international observers, and it's not going to be a one-time solution. It's not going to be yes, ho gaya. No, it's not going to happen like that. It has the people have to be taken into confidence. The thing is that India and Kashmir's relationship is become too sour for that, I guess. And first of all, India should look to take some confidence building measures, like demilitarize certain areas in which there is not much militancy. Militancy is answer of what? The presence of military men 24/7 in civilian populace is the root cause of militancy, actually, because if there is frequent interaction between military and civilians, the chances of violence are higher. And that's what gets things, sometimes it gets out of situation and ends up making one person a militant and making some people get killed in this process. So I think confidence building measures can be taken, and certain areas, if possible, can be demilitarized. Armed Forces Special Powers Act from certain areas can be lifted in order to make people realize that we are not being pushed back. And that could be one possible way out. There is no one solution. Pakistan is a party to the dispute. India has talked to Pakistan. India has talked to Kashmiris. So it's now in a different zone. It has to be taken very seriously by those who are involved. And yeah, that is the only way out, I find.
Thank you, Mr. Syed. We now have a question from Mr. Viranjana. An attendee asked that in Sri Lanka, the 4 approaches of transitional justice were not observed, as you mentioned. What incident made you feel that way? Can you briefly answer, maybe within 30 or 25 seconds?
Yeah, surely. We all know there is a criminal prosecution process in the transnational discipline approach, but in Sri Lankan point of view, there is nothing happened. Be frankly speaking, because some things, people who arrested under the PTI, Prevention of Terrorism Act, it means that people who worked against that Tamil tigers, they were arrested, legal process going against them. But in the government against the military members, there's nothing going on. There was some incident that in the under general legal procedure, they arrested some people and jailed for killings of innocent people, but they also got president pardon. This kind of thing situation on, there is no criminal persecution process against war criminals or something like that. That's that process. Or the other one is truth seeking. As I earlier mentioned, we had some kind of a commissions, a missing person commission, and they made inquiries, but it is not successful. Then again, that repatriation process, it's around 80% repatriation process was done, but still there are some lands and other things, people displaced people are there, they miss their lands and they have to stay somewhere else. The other one is legal reforms. Actually, there is nothing happen as legal reforms from 2002 to 9. Even that 13th amendment, there is a existing solution in Sri Lanka for the affirm Tamil's rights, but it is still kind of a paralyzed process of the administrative process. It's a kind of a paralyzed section.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Thank you.
Frankly speaking, there's nothing happening.
Thank you for getting us there. Now we have a final question for this session to Mr. Syed and Mahfouza. We expect one of you will answer that question.
Yeah.
The question was, don't you think comparing terrorism and atrocities is quite like comparing to incomparable? If you start from observing the root causes or elements, it's quite hard to compare. How did you do that? If you could answer in a very succinct.
So, may I answer?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So yes, you can say this is incomparable to compare, because both are the causes of crime, we can say, in the gray area, there is no specific. But we can also, in terms of saying both are crimes, and for crimes, you don't have any specific factor, not only this crime, and every crime. You can't say there is a specific cause for that it's happened. So in that case, we can. But I'm not saying that whoever face a genocide, they will be terrorists. Not done. That is not the justified way also. But there might have possibility. Because if we see in the Kashmir issues, there are many people who are trying to being violent because they think we are not getting our rights. As also Syed Murtaza has said, they don't know the rights. So then it is possible to even exploit them by other terrorist groups. That is, I am saying. And by starting from that observing root cause, yes, it is hard to compare, because when we don't know actually what is the root cause, that's true. If we do not give justice to the any atrocity, that may create some other violence. That is the thing I am trying to mention.
Thank you, ma'am.
May I also
we are good for now.
Answer one question if possible? Am I audible?
Yes, Mr. Syed, you are audible.
Actually, regarding the Kashmir question that I wanted to answer, that it is incomparable, we are saying the same thing, that it is not possible that in every case every Kashmiri has not turned into violent means, but there are certain groups who would turn if the atrocities are committed. And if you say about the Kashmiri Pandit issue also, that it is the thing that we are saying that genocidal atrocities has the potential to turn people to violence, because it is done by the state, it is done by the government, people in power. So the person does not have any international support, neither the person has the group has internal support. Then what is the means left for them rather than to stand for themselves? And that is what the Rwandan Tutsi people also did when they were faced by the genocidal atrocities. So it is not possible that in every case it would happen, but there is a potential relationship, and you can refer to the work of Erwin Staub for more and detailed analysis of how it works and functions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Syed.
We have another question in chat box.
I think we have a question from George. I think I would like to answer that. No, we are not endorsing that idea one man terrorist as another man freedom fighter. But yeah, it really depends upon the person who defines, who sees that, whether the person belongs to one group, another will actually have implication how they define it. And that is how I think it should be seen.
Thank you, everyone. We will not be taking any questions anymore. We have other sessions in order. So thank you for being with us. It is an absolute honor for me to host this session. So I'll be looking forward to hosting you again in some other sessions. Till then, stay well. Goodbye.